Everyone, welcome to Algebra 2, Lesson 2-6, the quadratic formula. We're going to continue with example 2, choose a solution method. Solve the equation 6x squared minus 7x minus 20 equals 0 using two different methods. Which do you prefer and why? So there are different methods to solve this quadratic equation. You can use the quadratic formula that we just learned, or you could use factoring by grouping. If you factor by grouping, just by looking at this visually, you can see that there are less steps in factoring by grouping. So some people prefer factoring by grouping, some people prefer quadratic formula. It's just your preference. But we're gonna look at both methods in this example, and we're gonna practice using both methods in case you're not familiar with another. So first of all, let's look at quadratic formula. We already know how to use it. Identify A, B, and C. A is 6, B is -7, C is -20, and then you plug it into quadratic formula. As you know, it is not a simple formula. There may or may not be silly mistakes while simplifying. So make sure you pay a careful attention. Make sure you have the signs correctly, and make sure you have both the plus and minus for your answers, right? And so if you simplify, you'll have either 5/2 or -4/3. Let's look at factoring by grouping, because this is something that you may need more explanation. 6x squared minus 7x minus 20 equals 0. You can look at the coefficients and see if there are any numbers that may benefit from grouping together. Well, 6 and 7, not really. 7 and 20, not really either. So you can change your middle term into numbers that would be beneficial for 6 and 20. So if you change this to something like -15 plus 8, right? -15x plus 8x is still -7x, right? We still didn't change the equation. So in the second step, it looks like our equation is getting longer, and it is for a bit, but it's actually helping us to group and categorize so that we can factor out nicely. So if we rewrite -7x as -15x plus 8x, then we can group this together and factor out 3x. Do you see the greatest common factor? Yeah. And then 8x minus 20, we could group them together to factor out 4. Yeah. So factor out your greatest common factor after grouping them together. And then we have 3x times 2x minus 5 plus 4 times 2x minus 5. Do you notice that we have the same factor inside the parentheses? Yeah, when we factored out the greatest common factor, the binomial that we have left they happen to be the same thing, 2x minus 5. And now we can factor this out. 2x minus 5 represents a number, right? So we can also treat this as a greatest common factor and factor this out, right? And we have 3x plus 4 if we factor it out. So we have these two binomials at the end. 3x plus 4 times 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. And then you can solve them separately. 3x plus 4 is equal to 0. 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. If either of them equals to 0, you're going to have a 0. So solve for these values. X would be either -4/3 or 5/2. Right? So sometimes factoring by grouping may require more time because your numbers are tricky, but a lot of times it works. And you can choose to solve by factoring by grouping, or you can use the quadratic formula, either way. Okay, but you'll notice that both methods give the same answers, right? They have the same results. the values are the same. And if you do it correctly, it should still give you the right answer. So sometimes it's more efficient to use grouping. Sometimes it's faster to use quadratic formula. It just depends on what kind of equation you have. So if you try to factor by grouping and it doesn't work, use quadratic formula. If you try quadratic formula and it's like too crazy, use factoring by grouping. Okay? But the quadratic formula always works. Factoring by grouping does not always work, but it may be more efficient when it works. But you need to know both ways, okay? So let's look at try number 2. Solve the equation 6x squared plus x minus 15 equals 0 using the quadratic formula and another method. So see if you can do both methods, factoring by grouping or quadratic formula, and come back when you're ready for answers. You should get the same answers by using both methods. So try to check your answers by using another method. Use both methods. Okay, are we ready? All right, 6x squared plus x minus 15 equals 0. First of all, what should we do first? Let's factor by grouping first. So try it too. Factor by grouping. You're going to have 6x squared plus x minus 15 equals 0. And you want to change the second term and rewrite it into two terms so that you can find a number that's more compatible with 6 and negative 15. So what are some ways to write x differently? 2x minus x, yeah, or negative 2 plus 3x, yeah, but you'll notice that one has to be a greater number and another one has to be a negative number so that you can have a difference of 1, right? Yeah, so you don't want fractions. So 0.5 plus 0.5x, you don't want that, right? So try to find numbers that would be small and also compatible with both numbers. And we come up with 10 minus 9. 9 and 15 are compatible because they have a factor of 3. And 10 and 6 are compatible because they both have factor of 2. So let's go with 10x minus 9x is equal to plus x, right? And then minus 15, 0. And then you're going to group these together, right? And then 6x squared plus 10x have a greatest common factor of 2x. So factor them out, 2x times 3x plus 5. And then minus, we're going to factor out negative 3. So negative 3 times 3x plus 5 is equal to 0. Yeah, and now we see that the binomial here we factored out from are the same. So we're going to factor this out. 3x plus 5 factored it out, and so we have 2x minus 3 left, right? And that's equal to 0. So you're going to split this equation. 2x minus 3 is equal to 0, or 3x plus 5 is equal to 0. And if you solve for x is equal to 3 over 2, or x is equal to negative 5 over 3. Okay, so these are our solutions. Using quadratic formula, you're going to plug into quadratic formula. Your a is 6, b is 1, c is negative 15. So plug it into the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus square root b minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. and then you simplify, and then you'll get square root of 361 over 12, and then you'll if you square root 361, it's a nice little 19. So now you're lucky. And then you add 19 from -1, or subtract 19 and then divide it by 12. And so ultimately you'll get the same answer, where it's 3 over 2 or -5 over 3. So it's still the same answer, it's just different methods. So check if you got the right answers. Check if you had all the steps correctly and you got the same answers for both methods. Okay, so if you got them correctly, good job. We'll continue with example 3 in the next video.